But this is arguably one of the best stories set in the Star Wars realm where we really see the danger of the Empire. We really see the fascism and the oppressive nature and what they're doing to people. Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Jake, and this is In Media Res, where we talk about all things media. So, last time we talked about representation in, entertainment. Today I'm actually going to talk about one thing a little bit weirder. And people are going to look at me like I'm crazy when I say this, but can a hero ruin a story? So I will preface this with why this is actually a question that popped in my head. So first of all, spoiler alert. If you have not watched Andor and intend on watching Andor, turn back now. You heard me? Spoiler alert. Okay. So, Andor is arguably one of the best shows that came out in 2022. If you don't know, it's a Star Wars show starring, I don't want to say starring, but centered around Cassian Andor, a character from Rogue One. If you've seen Rogue One, you know he dies at the end. If not, the movie's been out for years, and I'm not apologizing for spoiling the ending. So, in Rogue One, he's definitely more of a hero. Definitely like kind of rough around the edges and grungy, but definitely a hero, I would say. Definitely he sacrifices himself at the end in a very bold way. But Andor is kind of his origin story and how he, joins up with the Rebel Alliance. And I'll be honest, when it started, I was unsure how I felt about it or, what I was going to think about it. We're 3 episodes in, and I am just like, when is this story ever going to start? Because in my personal opinion, the first 3 episodes were the pilot. It felt like those first 3 episodes were kind of the setup of the story. It seemed like it was one single story arc. And that was really when the story got going, was after episode 1. Can't seem to talk. And then from there, he, takes the pay to go help on this job, which then kind of goes off the rails. People die, people get killed. Flash forward, he ends up in prison. Season kind of ends with the prison break. And he makes it back home. After his kind of adopted mother dies, and kind of a rebellious, riotous moment is kind of where the season ends. But there is no hero of the story. Arguably, the only kind of real hero that we see is kind of his adopted mother, and I can't remember her name to save my life. And then maybe Mon Mothma. But at the same time, with Mon, she also spends the season kind of really deciding on whether she's going to do something that's kind of sketchy and, whether the underhanded tactics are the right way to go about kind of fighting the Empire. She's like, I'm the good guy. I shouldn't be doing these things. I want to be the good guy. I want to be the good person and continue to do the morally right thing. And so she spends a lot of this season kind of covering up some money that she had been taking from her own, she'd been taking her own money, but, it was causing problems, or was causing suspicions about why this money was, being pulled out of this. Said it was for charity, but there was still questions surrounding it. And so now it was a matter of hiding the money. Or I guess creating a new trail for the money so that it looks like it was being allocated somewhere and not going to, say, like the Rebel Alliance. But in doing so, there were underhanded tactics involved. Andy and Andean. Cassian Andor was not a hero by any stretch of the means at this point. He's not even a reluctant hero. He's just not even a hero. So at the end of the day, there isn't really a hero. And Stellan Skarsgård's character is sure as hell not a hero. I mean, like, this dude is willing to do whatever it takes. He's got this great monologue at the end about kind of all of the shit that he's seen and all the things that he's had to go through and experience. And a lot of people think he might have been a Jedi. And he's talking about, like, I suffer these moments so other people don't have to. I do the dirty deeds so that somebody else doesn't have to. And it's like a really poignant moment. And it's kind of where all these characters are struggling. Like, you've got Andor, who doesn't want to do any of this and kind of keeps getting pulled into it. And then you've got Mon Mothma, who is trying to do the right thing, even if kind of the underhanded thing is the thing that will kind of get the better result in the end. And then the person who's willing to do whatever it takes to overthrow the Empire. So all of these kind of central characters that we have in Andor, I would say none of them are a hero. But this is arguably one of the best stories set in the Star Wars realm where we really see the danger of the Empire. We really see the fascism and the oppressive nature and what they're doing to people. And that's not the way that we haven't seen it before. Obviously, we've definitely seen it in Clone Wars and in Rebels, and we even see it in the movies. But never to this nature. Because in all of those other stories, we're following a hero. In Rebels, we follow this group of people who were like, very much like gung-ho. They want to be the heroes. They want to do the right thing and save the world or save the galaxy. And then in Star Wars, every trilogy, you have a hero. You have this kind of cliche good versus evil and this, the hero's journey. And that's the center. That's the center of the story. Sure, Luke is fighting Vader and the Emperor and overthrowing this fascist regime, but the story at the center is a battle of good versus evil, and Luke becoming a Jedi, Luke becoming a hero. So it is literally your typical hero's journey of reluctant hero to hero. And it's the same thing with Han and Leia as well. They both are experiencing a hero's journey. Han by complete happenstance, and Leia because obviously she was a senator, she was part of the Rebel Alliance, and her world was destroyed by the Empire. So it's the kind of the typical hero's journey for all of them, and it's the same thing in the original trilogy. Granted, one of them is a slow descent into evil. Obi-Wan is Obi-Wan, and the new one is kind of the same thing. It's this battle between good and evil, this time kind of more internally. The struggle with these characters to whether be on the light side or the dark side. But that's the story. And I know we love it. It's a tale as old as time, and we see it time and time again. But so much of the hero's journey is why they're a hero in the first place. Why is there a need for a hero? And sometimes you kind of get the broad strokes version of Empire bad, fascist, Nazi symbolism. And then you're like, okay, cool. That's the end of that. Let's move on to Return of the Jedi. But when it came to Andor, it's you didn't have those heroes. You had a group of people trying to go through life, and some of them are heroes. Some of them are trying to be rebels. Others are very much anti-heroes. Some of them are even villains, who don't really know that they're villains because they've drank the Kool-Aid. And I think the story's better for it. When Andean, why do I keep saying that? Andean, who the hell is Andean? When Andor goes to prison, it reminded me very much of a Nazi internment camp. Well, the stories that we get from Nazi internment camps. And I mean, I don't know how real some of these stories are, but, this concept of doing kind of a nothing burger work, digging trenches, moving a rock from here to there, and this kind of monotonous, repetitious work that almost can drive a person insane. And that's what they're doing in the prison. Like, I mean, granted, yes, spoilers at the end, we see that they're building parts for the Death Star, but the work they're doing is very, they're doing the same thing on repeat with no seemingly rhyme or reason. It's not like they're on an assembly line where they know what they're building. They're all building the same part and they have no clue what it is. They just keep doing it. And then you've got these people literally standing over them, watching them, ready to freaking shock the floor if they're not, doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then the conversation of how he even got there in the first place. He, after the job, goes on to this planet, is doing the dirty with a girl, goes outside, and he just happens to be in the vicinity where someone was like a rebel or was stealing or something. And so he gets arrested and sentenced to, I think it was 6 years in prison. And they're like, oh, you're this, that, and the other. You were loitering. You were involved in this kind of thing. And it's like he didn't even do anything. Also, yet again, very Nazi Germany. Kind of this over punishment for small crimes or, there's no justice. You were literally like, hey, you were there, guilty. Fascism. And it's the same moments. These are just small little bits that you don't ever really get to see in the stories. And occasionally you would get standalone episodes in the Clone Wars or the Rebels when you go to Saw Gerrera's world when he was younger and they kind of helped train the rebels to fight the separatists and and then his sister dies and then obviously Saul's oh, and then eventually we see what he becomes later on, kind of in Rebels and in Rogue One, and even Andor, he's in that too. But these are standalone moments. These moments happen and then we leave. And sure, you see what happens 20 years later, but you don't really get to live in those moments. You see a standalone 20 minutes where, Ahsoka or Obi-Wan or Padme come in, experience this moment, and then leave. It's kind of the same thing with Rebels. They kind of have their own standalone stories on their own planets that we kind of get into a little bit. But yet again, a lot of the real kind of oppression that we see is on these kind of standalone planets where the Empire is being overbearing or doing something that's oppressive. They go in, save the day, bounce out. We don't see the before or after. We don't see what it's like to live under the oppressive regime of the Empire. And so when you come to Andor, even on the planet where they're robbing the stuff from the dam, you see how they are manipulating the kind of the natives in this world, and even, how they're using this kind of, I don't even know what you call it, meteor shower thingy to appease them. And it's just, I can't speak enough about how great this show is and really how it's the first time I feel like I'm seeing the Empire for what it is. And that's not to say I knew it was fascist, but this is the first time you feel like you're really seeing the kind of the nitty gritty and the down and the dirts, and you're seeing what the average people go through, not what the heroes go through. And so it makes me wonder, can a hero ruin a story? And I guess it's kind of a dumb question if you think about it, because the hero is living their own story. It's not, it's not Cassian Andor's story. It's, you know what I mean? It's not Leia's story. Their story is good. They're living it. That's what we're experiencing. But how often do we miss kind of the real moments because we're too wrapped up in whether, Luke can lift his ship out of the swamps of Dagobah? I mean, it's great and all, but I think Cassian Andor trying to break out of a prison that's in the middle of the ocean is more interesting. Why he's in prison, what he's doing in prison, how they're running the prison. I find that to be exponentially more fascinating. And sometimes it's the same thing when you're watching a movie, and you kind of see the B story and you're like, why is the B story seem to be more entertaining than the A story? And it's because the B story is where you're getting like your subplots and your kind of minor characters, and kind of you're seeing the characters revolving around, I would say orbiting the main characters. And sometimes you're like, I want to see that. I want to know what's going on there. And you don't forget it. And I almost kind of feel like that's what Andor is. Mon Mothma's popped up over the years and kind of little tidbits in Rebels and the original, in the prequel trilogy, and like, and now she's here and we're finally getting her story. And she was in Rogue One for like 2.5 seconds. And then the same, Andor and Saw Gerrera and like all these people who kind of orbit the main characters. And now we're kind of, getting what were the side characters doing during all of this. And I find it exponentially more fascinating. And I want to see more of it. Oh my God, I'm going to freaking mess this up if I keep bumping this microphone. But I want to see more stories like that where we get to see what's going on elsewhere. You know what I mean? It's kind of like my complaint of like, stop with the Skywalkers. Like, no one cares. Like, move on. Like, that's not to say that I don't enjoy characters kind of in their orbit, because I freaking love Ahsoka and I would love to learn more about Yoda. But we don't need more Skywalkers. We didn't need Luke and Leia. Like, we didn't need them in the new trilogy. I mean, whether you enjoyed it or not, like, that's just kind of like, I somewhat enjoyed the new trilogy, but I still agree, like, why can't we have something different? Like, I'm excited for, like, The Acolyte, and that's why I enjoyed that, and The Bad Batch, and, like, I enjoy these kind of other stories that allow us to live in the world that don't center around the hero. And I love it. It's kind of like the same thing in some anime, like ReZero, Starting Life in Another World, or whatever it's called. Subaru is not the heroes, but he's like surrounded by these extraordinary people. And he's a nothing burger. I mean, his only thing is that he keeps dying and coming back. And quite frankly, he's a bit traumatized for it. So like, but side characters can be exponentially more fascinating sometimes than the main character, because maybe the main character is an insert for the writer or what, but I think it's partially because we've seen the hero's journey so many times. And these other stories are ones that feel a bit newer and they feel a bit fresher. So that's just my take. Whether a hero can ruin a story or not. And I know that sounds insane because, I mean, eventually, Andor does become a hero. He helps get the plans for the Death Star. Ironically, he helped build it too. OMG, that definitely adds another layer that just occurred to me. Homegirl's freaking father designed the Death Star, and then Andor helped build, like, part of the Death Star. That just occurred to me. I don't know if that's some huge revelation, but it feels like one. Anyways, that's my opinion. Let me know what you think. I don't think I'm crazy. I think it's just an opinion, but let me know what you think. If you think that maybe sometimes that a hero can ruin a story, and that sometimes we don't get the best story because we're too busy focused on someone like the hero, where, we're too busy watching, Luke flip through a jungle with a Yoda on his back, or a Grogu, and completely ignoring what's happening outside of that moment. And maybe what's happening outside of that moment's better. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Let me know. Comment, message, whatever. Just let me know. Talk about it below, around. Tell your friends. So, anyways, this has been Jake with In Medias Res, and I will see you all next time. Bye.